All right, good afternoon, everyone. We're here for the civil calendar of the 1:30 p.m. emergency hearing in case number 2023-375-899. I see that Mr. Bishop is here on behalf of defendant, and I see Lewis Brown is also here. We have plaintiff Terrence Napier in attendance. Is Kenrick Johnson with us today?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Are you appearing as the iPhone is what it says?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm going to change your name for the judge's convenience so she can better understand who's speaking when you are talking. She may ask you to turn on your camera when we actually get to the hearing. All right, and then we have Lady Etiquette and Tia. Can anyone identify for me who these folks are?
A tenant.
I'm sorry?
You said Tia is a tenant.
Oh, she's a tenant. Okay. And Lady Etiquette is also a tenant? Oh,
no.
Lady Etiquette has disappeared. All right. So Tia is a tenant. All right. I just wanted to make sure I knew who all was on before we got underway. So the judge will be joining us any moment here. I do not see a court reporter. Mr. Bishop, was that your office trying to reach the chambers earlier about getting a court reporter?
It was, and I understand she's at a conference and we missed the 2 business day window, so we'll go as is.
Okay. All right then. Here comes the judge.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Hello. So I have on for hearing today. Get my notepad so I can take notes. I have on for hearing today a request for a TRO in the matter of. I have so many emails open. It's a little frightening at this point. Terrence Napier and Kenrick Johnson versus Buckhead Preservation Trust, LLC, and Lewis Brown. I've reviewed the filings from the parties, and I am generally aware of the nature of the claims that have been brought by Terrence Napier and Kenrick Johnson. I'm also aware that part of the answer included some counterclaims that have been brought on behalf of the Buckhead Preservation Trust, and that the party seeking the TRO today are the defendants, the Buckhead Preservation Trust and Lewis Brown. Beyond that, I know there's some procedural information that I'm maybe not aware of that I expect you'll educate me on. But I am with that information ready to proceed when you are. Is that Mr. Bishop? Are you representing the trust and Mr. Brown?
It is, Your Honor, and I'd like to introduce to the court my associate Jordana Oppenheim, who is a first-year lawyer shadowing.
Hello, Ms. Oppenheim. Welcome to the club. It's good to have you, and I'm happy for you to be here. Thank you, Mr. Bishop, for that introduction.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, and who do I have representing Mr. Napier and Mr. Johnson?
We're going to do pro se today.
Okay, so Mr. Napier, you're representing yourself, is that right?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, and then Mr. Johnson is also representing himself, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and who is Tia? There's another person on the call named Tia. Who is that?
She's a tenant who stays in unit number 6 at the property.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so thank you, Mr. Napier. And so I will, Mr. Bishop, it's your motion. So if you would like to go ahead, just to give everybody the lay of the land. Are you anticipating mostly argument? Are you anticipating the calling of witnesses? And if so, what is your estimate for how long you think you will need to present your evidence?
Well, thank you, Your Honor. I anticipate doing most of it through witness testimony. I expect I will need 20 minutes for Mr. Brown and maybe 10 or 15 apiece for Messrs. Napier and Johnson,
Okay.
and maybe 5 to 10 for Tia, whom I've only just heard of.
Okay. Okay. And then we would potentially hear from any additional witnesses and evidence. Okay. Do you want to have any sort of opening statement, or do you just want to go ahead and start with your witnesses, sir?
I would like to open briefly, if it please Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor. As you noted, this case has an interesting procedural posture. Messrs. Napier and Johnson sued Mr. Brown and an entity designated as Buckhead Preservation Trust LLC, essentially on an alleged breach of contract claim. We answered timely and asserted counterclaims because the defect in plaintiff's pleading is that they are not a party to the contract at issue and don't have standing to assert enforcement of it. We'll get into some of that in the witness testimony. Briefly, Mr. Brown is the owner of the property located at 2896 North Fulton Drive. It's a 2986 North Fulton Drive, Atlanta. It's a 15-unit, used to be apartment complex that was turned into a condominium. Mr. Brown purchased it on behalf of the trust 20 years ago. And the counterclaims all have to do with Messrs. Napier and Johnson and whether they have any possessory or ownership interest in a particular unit, Unit 11, which was the only one Mr. Brown did not own. That unit was owned by Russell Martin, who passed away, and he was the party who was involved in the contract that may have, if it had been performed, sold the remaining units from the trust to him and his company. But Mr. Martin died and the contract was not fully performed.
Okay, and so I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that was part that I wanted to make sure I had a little bit of a better understanding. Tell me the name of the individual who passed away.
Russell Martin.
Mr. Martin. So Mr. Martin owned Unit 11.
Correct.
And was, at the time of his death, either had entered into a contract or was negotiating the terms of a contract that would have, at least that's what I understand the allegations to be, that would have allowed him to purchase the entire building, so the remaining units, from Mr. Brown or from the Buckhead Preservation Trust. Is that right?
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay. And what was the status of that contract at the time that was it the contract had been entered into but had not been performed or closed as a real estate transaction, or was that it had not been finalized?
The contract had been signed but not performed.
Okay. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Bishop.
And thank you, Your Honor. That's the substance, I think, of the attorney argument. We would stand on our briefing. There are about 9 or 10 claims that all sound in declaratory judgment, TRO, trespass, nuisance, and rather than rehash all that, I think it would be best to call Mr. Brown as a witness and you receive his testimony on those issues.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Bishop. You may call your first. Oh, wait, hang on. I apologize. Mr. Napier, do you wish to make a brief opening statement on these issues?
My opening statement is pretty direct. Mr. Martin passed. We were trying to figure out if that was even true, because we were business partners. I invested a lot of money into the property. I think that Lewis ill-informed his representation, and we'll sit here and prove that today. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward or whatever. I'm kind of offended by the accusations as far as what Lou was saying in his response with the attorney saying trespass and et cetera. I think is real disrespectful, and we probably shouldn't even be here today. We the ones who filed the lawsuit against him, and I don't know why he's taking this route, but we'll figure it out today.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Napier. Mr. Johnson, did you want to say anything, sir?
No, I don't need to say anything as of right now because he said everything that I was going to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Bishop, you may call your first witness.
All right, Mr. Brown, will you please raise your right hand so the court can see it? I'm going to swear you in. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Mr. Brown, would you please introduce yourself to the court?
Lewis Brown, trustee of Buckhead Preservation Trust.
And Mr. Brown, could you just give the court a little bit of background? When did the trust first purchase the property?
Oh, it was over 20 years ago. When Russell Martin found the deal and brought it to me and wanted to partner with me on it.
So I see where you're going. I want to break that down some. You were business partner with Russell Brown.
Russell Martin.
I'm sorry, Russell Martin. That's right. And Mr. Martin brought the deal to you.
That was years ago. That was
Sure.
around 2001. And when once it was split up into condominium units, we departed ways, and basically his compensation was unit number 11.
Understood. Well, I want to make sure that we do the legal documentation correctly. So, Your Honor, I'm happy to share my screen if that's easiest. I'm about to be discussing an exhibit that was attached to our TRO for Mr. Brown to verify it. Is it Your Honor's preference that we share screen to talk about exhibits?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. Mr. Brown, I'm going to be showing you an exhibit here. Please let me know if you can see it.
I see something on the screen. I
Yeah,
won't say
it's
that I can
very
see
tiny,
it.
Mr. Bishop. So you definitely are going to want to zoom in for some of us with older eyes, right, Mr. Brown?
Yeah, baby.
Is that any better?
Well, it's on a page that doesn't have a lot of text, so.
Okay, all right. Let me see if I can pull it onto it. I've got two screens here, Your Honor. Let me see if this other screen's a little bit better. Try it here. All right, how's this one?
That's much better.
Okay. All right, Mr. Brown, are you looking at what's been labeled Exhibit 2?
I can, yes.
Okay, and as I scroll down, do you see a document entitled Limited Warranty Deed?
I do.
And I'm just going to read the first paragraph to you. This indenture made of March 12, 2021, or excuse me, 2001 between Inman Park Properties as grantor and LD Brown as trustee of Buckhead Preservation Trust. Is this the deed of the purchase of the property you referenced over 20 years ago?
It is.
And as I scroll down, is that the correct signature of you as a witness and the grantor here, Mr. Notrica?
I was not a witness to that. That is not my initials, but yes, Jeff Notrica is the one we purchased it from.
All right. And have you seen this document before in connection with your temporary restraining order pleadings?
I have.
And it was attached to your motion for a TRO?
That's correct.
Okay. And I'm just scrolling down here to the legal description. Is this, as you can see it, a correct description of the property which was sold to you, the condominium complex?
It looks correct, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'm going to stop sharing my screen since we've established that that's a true and correct copy of the limited warranty deed attached to your motion as Exhibit 2. Have you ever, other than Unit 11, liquidated or sold any of your interest in the property?
No.
You told me about Mr. Martin walking away with Unit 11 as part of sort of y'all parting ways in your business partnership. Did you ever approach Mr. Martin, or did he ever approach you about purchasing the remaining units?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that, please?
So basically, it became a Mexican standoff. Essentially, we would have residents in other units and he would intimidate them and force them out. And so it was pretty much you buy us out or we buy you out. And in February of 2020, we came to an agreement that he would buy our remaining 14 units. However, he did not perform on that agreement.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And maybe to avoid some of the back and forth with the screen share, maybe I can just ask you, are you familiar with Exhibit A that we attached to your counterclaim?
I don't know what Exhibit A is.
Okay, I'll show it to you then and see if that can help. Can you see the screen share that I have now, Mr.
I can.
Brown? Okay, so you're looking at something denominated Exhibit A. As I scroll down, I just want to ask you if you've seen this document before.
Yes.
Okay, is this the purchase and sale agreement to sell the other units to Mr. Mark?
It is.
Now I want to scroll down with you to the signature page. At the bottom of page 7, do you recognize these signatures?
Yes, I do.
Whose signatures are they?
Russell Martin III and my name as trustee.
And Mr. Martin's on the left
Yes,
and you're on the right.
correct.
And is this a true and correct copy of the purchase and sale agreement that you two entered?
It is.
And this is what you provided my office to file with this lawsuit, correct?
That's correct.
I noticed, well, let me ask you, were there any other signatories to this agreement?
Not at all.
So Mr. Napier is not signed on behalf of Mr. Martin or Venture Partners,
No,
and Mr. Johnson isn't signed on behalf of Mr. Martin or Venture Partners.
no,
Had you even heard of Mr. Napier or Mr. Johnson when you entered this contract with Mr. Martin?
not at all.
I'm going to stop the screen share now. It cut out on me. Are you still there?
Yes.
I'm here.
Okay, great. I'm going to shift around here to another exhibit, which was tendered by the plaintiffs last night at 7:35 p.m. Mr. Brown, have you seen this purchase and sale agreement before?
When you pointed it out to me this morning, yes,
And so I want to go down to the same signature page with you. Page 7, does this appear to have Mr. Martin and your signatures on it?
it does.
Does it appear to have any additional signatures?
It does.
And what additional signature does it have?
I believe it's Kenrick Johnson.
Had you ever seen this before today?
No,
Do you know why there's a version with Mr. Johnson's name on it?
it makes no sense to me because the night that Russell Martin and I met over Chinese dinner and formulated this agreement, there was 2 copies, one for him and one for me, and we executed 2 copies, and he took away one and I took away the other one. And to my knowledge, there was no one else involved in that agreement. He and I sat over dinner and we worked out the details of the deal, and he never called anyone else. He never asked anyone else's permission. So no, I don't know of anyone else's involvement.
Understood. And I just want to go back real quick with you to the signature page on page 7 of Exhibit A. Looking at number 2 under the buyer side, there's no printed type in there for the buyer's name and address, right?
No,
Okay, so if we switch, and it was Exhibit A, which I just put back up on the screen, is that how it looked the night you signed it at the Chinese restaurant?
correct.
Okay, so if we go back to plaintiff's exhibit under 2, it looks like someone has kind of typed back into the document Mr. Johnson's address and information. Is that right?
That's what it looks like to me.
So that then would not have been the original document that you signed.
No,
Thank you, sir. I'm going to stop the screen share for now and return to regular examination. Are you aware? Well, let me ask one more question about the PSA. That purchase and sale agreement did not grant immediate ownership, correct?
no,
In fact, it had to satisfy a payment of 2.3 million some odd dollars before ownership transferred, correct?
that is correct.
And you never transferred ownership outside of after you received that limited warranty deed that we looked at earlier, right?
No,
Okay. Do you know whether Mr. Martin ever entered a lease agreement for Unit 11?
no, he never, he lived there. So no, he didn't enter into a lease agreement with anyone else.
So let's come forward in the timeline some. We talked about this agreement that was entered in February of 2021. Did Mr. Martin pass away at any point in time?
So to my knowledge, I was called the day after he passed away by a friend, a mutual friend who knew me and knew him. And he told me that he had passed away. So I said, what? I was in shock because I didn't even know he was in the hospital. I knew he had some health problems, but I didn't know he was in the hospital. And so I said, no, I don't know about that. I just happened to be in Buckhead at the time that I got the call at the Home Depot there. And so I went over to the building right away and there was no one there.
And do you remember what day or month this was?
Well, it was definitely December. It was December 27th, I think, something around that time. And I was actually looking at the closeout Christmas decorations at Home Depot when I got the call. So that's how I remember that. But I don't remember the exact day. I think it was a Wednesday, but I'm not sure.
And when you say December, is that of 2021 or 2022?
2022.
2022. All right. Have you ever been, who contacted you about Mr. Martin's death?
Pennington Green.
And who is that?
Pennington was someone that Russell knew, and he was like a mediator. He became very interested in what we were doing and how we were doing it. He had an interest in buying the building with Russell Martin at one point. When that didn't work out, he just called me for real estate advice from time to time. And he would tell me the different projects he was working on and just maintained a relationship with me.
Did you ever speak to any of Mr. Martin's family about his passing?
I did. Once I knew about it, Pennington got me in touch with some of the folks that were his family in Savannah. And so I ended up talking with his sister, and she basically was trying to navigate whether they were going to bring his body back there or whether they were going to bury it here. He had a very estranged relationship with his family, with his two sisters, and his mother. His mother disowned him, and his two sisters had not had contact with him for many years. So they were all like, we kind of hands off about the whole thing. And she got a copy of his will, and she was appointed in the will as his executrix, and he had left his belongings to her son. So she had an interest in it, and eventually she traveled from Savannah to meet me there at the building.
Okay, so you went to the building then with Mr. Martin's sister.
Correct.
And was that the first time you've been to the building since Mr. Martin passed?
No.
Okay. Can you tell me about the first time you went and then your visit with the sister?
Well, the first time I went was that, like I said, that day that I heard that he had passed away. And then I checked out the building. There were some units that were open. Most of the units were locked. And so knowing that we owned the 14 units, I ordered that the locks be changed. I talked with his sister. She was worried who might have the keys to the building. I was worried who might have the keys to the building. So she asked me to change his lock as well. So we changed the locks on all 15 units.
And did those locks remain changed?
No. We went back about a week later and found that 3 of the units' doors had been kicked in. And so I had Donnie, my maintenance supervisor, go back over there and secure those 3 units. Then we went back and found that all of the locks had been changed on the entire building.
Were you able to, well, first of all, let me ask you, how much did it cost to get these locks changed?
$950 was the bill plus Donnie's time, which was a separate number.
And all that down the drain after the locks were drilled out, right?
Correct.
Were you able to investigate and come to a conclusion about how or why the locks had been drilled out?
Well, I was in shock, and the only number I had was, so Russell Martin had passed away, but he had someone, a friend, who took him over to the hospital, and Russell appointed him as his next in line emergency number. And so his name is Alex. And so Alex contacted me, and then he through my connections with the sister, we all got together and we met over at the building that same day that she came in from Savannah. He brought all of Russell's personal belongings from the hospital, and including his phone. his phone did not have a password or passcode on it. So we were able to see numbers on there. And what we had been told is that Ken, not Kenrick, but Ken was the guy who was like his maintenance guy and would sweep the water off the building and things like that, sweep the water off the roof that was leaking. And so he was doing maintenance stuff there. So I contacted him, hoping that we would be able to work together and perhaps he could do some work for me. So he led me to believe that that's what we were doing for a while.
All right, so I want to break this down. I promised the court I'd be judicious with your time, so I want to hit some more high points and conclude your testimony. Tell me about the first time you reached contact with Mr. Johnson.
He asked me, where's Russell? And I had his sister, being concerned about things, did not want me to say, so I didn't say. I just said, I don't know.
And what happened after that conversation?
What happened after that? Well, we talked several times about different things. I wanted to get my people on the property. I had my worker there. Obviously, I'd had Donnie already change the locks, and then we found that the locks had been changed again. So I needed to get my people on the property to do the valuations of the electricity, the plumbing, the roofing, the painting, everything that needed to be done there, which, you know, was significant in some units. And, you know, so what happened was we were blocked, and basically Donnie came over there and he was essentially escorted off of the property. And then I had my plumber go over there and he was escorted by Kenrick out off the property. And then I had a plumber go. So I had an electrician, plumber, roofer, and my carpenter slash property maintenance supervisor over there. And all of them were basically told to go away and were forced off of the property, you know, from an intimidation standpoint. So
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask, who was it that escorted them off the property? Who thought that they had control over the property?
Kenrick Johnson.
Okay.
Kenrick would not give me his last name, and neither. And then one time, Kenrick got me on the phone with Terrence, and Terrence would not give me his last name either.
Did you find their last names out for the first time when they sued you?
Yes.
Had you ever given Kenrick Johnson the authority to control ingress and egress from the property?
Not at all.
Had you ever given Mr. Napier authority to control ingress and egress from the property?
Not at all.
Had you ever leased a unit to Mr. Johnson?
Not at all.
Had you ever leased a unit to Mr. Napier?
No.
To your knowledge, did Mr. Martin?
No.
To either of them?
No.
You said your crews were escorted off and intimidated. Would they go back now? Like, could you get someone out there to do the work?
If we had control of the entire building, they would go back. But if we did not, they would not go back.
And is this because they're concerned for their safety?
Yes.
And then, so let me ask this question. If the locks are drilled out, was there
Excuse me.
Excuse
Can
me,
I address?
Mr. Johnson, do you have an objection?
Yes, about the CERC of the safety issue, because when he came here and he broke it to my unit 11,
Well,
my
hang
guns
on,
had
Mr. Johnson, let me
Okay.
interrupt you for
I'm
just a second. So, no, that's okay. So you will have an opportunity to ask Mr. Brown questions and to challenge the testimony that he's giving when it's your opportunity. But right now it is Mr. Bishop's opportunity to ask Mr. Brown questions. So the only time that you would interject in that situation would be if you had an objection to the nature of the question or something about that. But if it's substantive, then it would be, you should wait your turn and then you would be able to ask Mr. Brown questions or challenge the testimony that he's just given. So with that guidance a little bit, do you have an objection or do you just want to disagree or challenge the testimony that he's giving?
I disagree.
Okay. Okay, well then I'm going to ask you, Mr. Johnson, if
I
you'll
will
wait
wait.
just a few minutes, and then
Yes.
you will have a chance to ask questions, okay?
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Let's see, Mr. Brown, coming back to the ability to do work on the property, are there external gates?
There's 3 external gates that block the building from access from the outside.
And have you been able to access those gates or get into them since Mr. Johnson took up residence?
Not since he changed the locks. Basically, except for one time when his niece let me and Mr. Martin's sister's attorney come into the building. She did not know that she was not supposed to. She said that after she called him, and he said, you weren't supposed to let them come on to the property. We were already on the property. We had already toured a number of the units, and including unit number 11, where we found that all of his antiques and all of his business papers and everything had been removed from his unit. So what, that's when they basically said, you've been sued. And I said, I don't know anything about it. And they gave me a piece of paper, a 1-pager, that without any proper service or anything like that. And so that's the first time I found out about anything related to being sued.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I want to break down something that you said. Why would you have been told you weren't allowed on the property?
Yeah, I'd like to know that myself, because basically there was absolutely no agreement on my part to let them take over the property. And I know Russell Martin, and I know that Russell Martin did not give them access to that entire building or any kind of agreement to his own unit where his grandmother's sofa was and all of the antiques that he had in there. He definitely was protective of his stuff. And no one was supposed to be in his unit.
And so did I hear you correctly that you weren't allowed on the property? Mr. Johnson's the only person on the property, but yet Mr. Martin, the deceased's personal effects and antiques were going missing?
Yes, they were gone by the time I got there with Melinda's attorney. That's when I found out that they were missing.
Okay. We've talked about the broken locks, talked about change locks, we talked about items going missing. Have any of the other units been broken into?
Oh, yes, all of them.
Okay. And were there anything missing from those, or were they using utilities? Okay, tell me what was missing.
Absolutely. So the utilities were on in unit number 12, which is one of the units that we own. And they had strung cords from unit 12 to unit 11. And basically they were using a propane heater in the unit because there was no electricity on in unit number 11.
All right. I think we've about covered it all, Mr. Brown. I want to make sure that I hit a couple more things with you. You took some pictures at the property showing water damage. Is that water damage still ongoing?
It is. It is. That building is under siege, basically, and it desperately needs a roof. And I have roofers, but like I said, I can't get the roofing job done.
And have you been able to lease or sell any of the units since this whole saga began?
Oh, not at all. I mean, no way. If you can't get people in to even look at the building, even to do work, there's no way that you can lease a building.
And do you have an idea? Well, let me ask you, you see the person who joined on the call, Tia, who plaintiffs represented as a tenant. Do you know who that is?
Never heard of her.
Did you lease unit 6 to Tia?
No, I did not.
So Tia would be another squatter subject to ejectment, right?
Correct.
Can you give us an idea in terms of lost time, value of money, what could be going on if you were able to rent these units, had access to them?
Well, these units would rent from anywhere from 1,500 to 2,500 per month. There's 12 2-bedrooms and 3 1-bedrooms. Or you might say 11 2-bedrooms, not counting Mr. Martin's unit. So there's 11 2-bedrooms and 3 1-bedrooms that we could lease if we were able to get the work done and get them rented. There are some units that were rentable in my estimation based on my inspection of them in January. We did make pictures of those and what have you. And so we were prepared to immediately lease those in January had we not run into this problem.
Two more questions for you. One, what is your understanding of Mr. Martin's estate? Could he sell unit 11 right now or otherwise get rid of it? So is it still tied up in probate?
It would need to be probated because it's in his name exclusively. And he and his estate own significant homeowners association dues to the homeowners association.
And so and you talk about the homeowner association, you mean under the condominium organization's rules, right?
Correct.
And under those rules, no unit owner could exclude another owner from the property or the common areas, could they?
Correct.
And so I guess I got to ask you, with the locks changed, can't get in, the looting, things going missing, violation of the condo rules, you can't get even to the common areas. What remedy do you have if the court doesn't grant our motion today?
I have none.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. That's all the questions I have for you right now. Let me tell you, I think the judge will advise you that the plaintiffs may be able to ask you questions, and then I'll redirect you to close out your testimony.
Fine.
That's correct. Mr. Napier, do you have questions for Mr. Brown?
Yes, I have a few questions. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Brown, you admitted that you and Russell parted business ways back in 2020?
No, back in 2001.
No, y'all joined business in 2001.
Yeah.
He brought you to a property. You guys made an agreement. In that agreement, you guys ended and decided to go separate ways in 2020.
No.
Okay, that's what you testified to.
No, I didn't.
You said y'all split up. Y'all decided to go
Hang on. Let's not talk over each other. I think, Mr. Brown, you had answered the question and Mr. Napier was trying to clarify what his question was or refresh your memory about what you'd said a moment ago. So let him do that. And if you guys will both try really hard to not talk over each other so I can hear what everybody says. Go ahead, Mr. Napier.
Okay, I'm sorry, Your Honor. You testified that you and Russell, after you had an agreement back in 2001, you decided 20 years later to separate because y'all had a Mexican standoff going on. Remember?
No, that's not what I said. To correct the record, it was 2000. As soon as he got his unit, that was the settlement. So we parted ways 20 years ago. And over the years, when we've rented out units, which we have a history of renting out units there under our account, not under his, we were continuing business under our ownership of the building.
So you guys were in business together in 2/12/2020?
No.
Your Honor, I'll try to give him some leeway as pro se, but I would object as asking and answered.
Sustained. I think you can go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You can move on.
Okay. Well, the agreement that your lawyer presented showed a purchase and sale agreement dated 2/12/2020 with your signature and Russell's signature. Did you see that?
Yes. Yes.
So under that agreement, you agreed to let Russell take over Unit 11.
No, under that agreement, he was going to purchase all the other 14 units.
Exactly. Do you have anything showing that he was in default of paying on this particular contract?
Oh, absolutely. When he didn't perform on the contract, it was a 9-month contract, and he didn't perform.
Okay, so you're a businessman, I'm assuming. You would have to have something that you sent in the mail or something to show that he was in default of this contract, right? If he wasn't paying you, you would acknowledge it in writing, wouldn't you?
No.
We would object to the extent it calls for a legal conclusion.
I'm just saying.
Mr. Napier, there's an objection. I'm the one who decides if there is a valid objection or not. So let's all not have any conversations with one another. Tell me again, Mr. Bishop, what is the nature of your objection?
I'll just withdraw, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Napier.
Okay, well, in this purchase agreement, I heard him make an accusation that Mr. Johnson's name was added to the purchase agreement. He also acknowledged that Mr. Russell at some point was confrontational with other tenants that they had. But he knew Mr. Russell so well that he knew Russell's other business affairs. My question to you, Mr. Brown, are you familiar with Teague Hunter of Hunter Hotels?
Not until you brought his name to the conversation when you and I were on the phone together with Kenrick Johnson. I've never heard of Teague Hunter before that. If I have, I didn't recall it.
Okay, Teague Hunter is the CEO of Hunter Hotels with Marriott. He builds Marriott hotels and all hotels all over the world. My thing, we submitted an exhibit with a check from Teague Hunter to Venture Partners, ATL LLC. Do you know who is business partners in Venture Partners LLC?
Your Honor, we would object as for lack of foundation and hearsay.
Sustained. So, Mr. Napier, we want to try and focus your presentation on things that you can ask Mr. Brown if he has knowledge about them.
Okay.
But what we try to avoid doing is offering testimony about what other people said.
Okay.
If you have documentation or a different witness, we can try and approach it that way. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't know how to share the screen or whatnot. I'm old. But it's a check that was submitted from Teague Hunter.
Is that, Mr. Napier, is that part of the documentation that
Yes,
you
ma'am.
attached to your response motion?
Yes, ma'am. It's a $60,000 check that's in attached. Check number 187.
Okay. So if you want to ask Mr. Brown about that check, you can. But if his answer is, which I think he may have already given, that he's not familiar with that check and doesn't know anything about it, then that's sort of the end of that inquiry. You could ask other people about it.
No, I want to ask Mr. Brown again.
Okay.
Mr. Brown, are you not aware of the Venture Partners ATL check from Teague Hunter for $60,000?
Not until this morning.
Okay. Now that goes to show we do have a legitimate check, and we have Teague who's willing, he's going to testify to this matter. Nobody's squatting, nobody's bums. You don't know who Russell Martin's business partners were. You testified, you know everything about Russell. Hold on. But you don't know who Teague Hunter is, who writes $60,000 and $100,000 checks to Russell to pay the taxes on a building through Venture Partners ATL LLC. Have you paid taxes on that building in the past 2 years?
Yes, I have.
Well, and Your Honor, we would just object to admission of the check. It is an unverified piece of hearsay evidence, and it did not comply with 911 7.1's redaction requirements for financial documents. So we'd ask the court to strike it from the record.
Okay. So I'm going to make it real easy. If I were to admit the document into evidence for Mr. Napier and Mr. Johnson's benefit, it would need to be redacted of any of the account and routing information at the bottom to avoid risk and concern of identity theft and other types of issues. That's number one. Number two, though, is that I've not heard anyone identify that document as being what it purports to be. And so it is not appropriately admitted as of yet. So for now, it is not part of the record. So.
Okay, Your Honor. Mr. Brown, are you a partner in Venture Partners ATL LLC?
Not at all.
Are you aware that the taxes for the past year and a half was paid and receipted to Venture Partners ATL LLC?
What I saw in your filing this morning.
I'm not filing. I'm just asking you, are you aware?
Your Honor, I would object that this is asked and answered.
I feel like if you've asked a question, then you should let Mr. Brown try to answer the question. And then if it's not responsive, then you can say that it's not responsive and the court shouldn't consider the answer. But for right now, you asked him if he was aware that some entity had paid the taxes. Did you say Investa?
Venture partners, we have receipts that we pay Investa to do the taxes for.
Okay, venture partners, you asked Mr. Brown if he was aware that they had paid the taxes on that property. Go ahead, Mr. Brown, if you can answer.
So we paid 52,000 something. I submitted that information to Tyler. That was for part of 2021 taxes, all of 2022 taxes. So no, venture partners, nor Teague Hunter, nor Mr. Napier, nor Mr. Johnson, no one paid 2022 taxes except for me.
Also, on December 27th, as you claim, you were just mysteriously hanging out at Home Depot around the corner from the building, and someone called you, Mr. Pennington.
I don't think it was mysterious at all.
But that day he called you was the day. It's funny. We love Russell. We don't think it's funny that he's dead. This is kind of a serious matter, but it's funny. So it could be funny to you. Pennington Green contacted you that day and told you that Mr. Martin was deceased, and you came the same day.
Yeah,
that's true.
That is absolutely true.
Did you see Kenrick Johnson there that day?
No one was there that day.
Who gave you permission to go into Unit 11?
I talked with Russell Martin's sister, and she's the one that gave me permission.
His sister gave you permission to go into a unit. She had no authority.
Hang on, Mr. Napier, that's a legal argument, right? You can ask him hang on. You can ask him what authority did you think his sister had, but you simply stating she had no authority, that's a legal argument. You need to ask your witness factual questions first so that I can hear the evidence, okay?
Okay, Your Honor, sorry.
That's okay, go ahead.
What made you believe that his sister, who was estranged, could give you permission to enter into that apartment?
Because of the will. The will named her as the executives of his estate.
So if you all had access to Russell's property, you guys would have had a key also, right?
She had all of his belongings. Remember that we met at the property. We met at the property with Alex, and Alex brought all of his belongings, including his keys and his phone and his personal clothing, those kind of things, his wallet, etc.
So you guys used the key, you used Russell's key to get in Unit 11?
Yes.
You go into Unit 11, you have a key. Why did you guys change the locks?
Because she asked me to. She said, I don't know who else might have the key. And so she had me, along with all the other locks, change the locks.
How many times were you on that property in the past 2 years since 2020?
No, several times. Basically, sometimes I would come there, Russell was not there. Generally, I would text him.
How would you describe you and Russell's relationship?
Strained.
Strained? Okay. So you're not against saying that Russell had his own company and business that you were unaware of?
I agree.
Okay. So instead of, let's say, saying that people are squatters or trespassers or ruining things, you just don't know.
I do know.
You guys,
I know your name is not on public record as an owner of that unit. That I know for sure.
You can debate. I heard about your debates in front. That's fine. What I'm saying is that you don't know what business affair Russell had going on outside of you because you guys were estranged. That's a respectable statement, don't you think?
Your Honor, I would just object this.
I'm going to save you the trouble, you've made your point, Mr. Bishop, Mr. Napier. Mr. Brown didn't know the ins and outs or have a whole lot of visibility into Mr. Martin's business dealings. I don't have a problem accepting that. So you've made your point. You can move on to something else.
Okay. Well, since you don't know, and you and Russell were estranged. What made you believe that the people that were there were squatters and looters? How did you come to that conclusion?
Because I witnessed that a lot of things that were there that were owned by us were gone. The air conditioning units that had been removed from the right-hand building that were on the ground on the pad were perfectly good compressor units, outdoor compressor units that, along with all of the sinks and the pedestals and the other items, were there. And when I noticed them gone, that's when I considered it to be theft and looting. And along with seeing that all of his personal belongings had been removed from the unit and knowing that his sister did not take them, I definitely consider it to be that, along with things that were in other units that were not owned by Russell at all, and those being missing. Yes, I consider that theft and looting and stealing.
Okay, well, let me tell you about theft, looting, and stealing. Kenrick Johnson's relationship with Russell, he's there every day, which is going to be proven with our private investigator to show forensics of his location for the past several years being there. But if you didn't have access to some of the other units which are used as storage, how do you know that those items that you're saying are not still on the property? Did you ask? Did you ask Ken, the other Ken?
When the answer is, when I arrived there with his sister's attorney and he and I looked in those units, those things were not there. And we got to see enough of the building to know that they were not, mysteriously stored someplace in the building. They were not there.
Did you have access to every unit with the lock on the door?
Yeah, we were able to see in or get into each unit.
Wow. Okay. That's just, it's not conclusive, but that, okay. So the units that were outside and the sinks and stuff that were stored, that you submitted pictures of in the exhibits, could that have possibly been trashed?
No, not at all.
So since
Russell had told me, and here's the reason I believe so, because Russell had told me that he had moved those off of the roof in order for the roof to be repaired. So they were in good shape, as are the other ones that are on the other building that are still there. And they were purchased at the same time. And they were installed at the same time. So I have every reason to believe they were in good shape. You don't have 6 air conditioning units all go out at the same time and be trash.
Okay, let me ask you this. What name brand were their units?
I don't know.
Do you know who paid for the units?
Well, back then, when they were originally installed, I paid for them.
If they were
about that one.
They were new. Some of them were never used, right? They couldn't go on the roof because the roof is messed up. I'm asking you, do you know the type of units? Do you know? You don't know. You don't. Well,
I have a picture of them. That's all I have.
That's a picture. So were you there the day they were purchased?
No. I believe I was. If you're telling me that they're new, no, I was not there when they were purchased.
Did you ask Ken, the maintenance guy, who you had repertoire with? Did you ask him what happened to the units?
I did.
What did he say?
He said, none of your business.
Why would he say that to you?
I don't know.
If you were Russell's friend?
I'm gonna instruct you not to answer that question. That question calls for speculation. You're asking him to speculate about why somebody else did something. And so maybe rephrase your questioner.
Okay, Your Honor. All I want to submit to the courts is that Russell, obviously, I don't know Mr. Brown from a can of paint. I've heard his name when these issues came up. I go back and forth from Las Vegas. I know what I paid Russell or Mr. Martin because my relationship with Ken goes extensive years. And I was going down to that property because I was interested in buying a property across the street called Copper Cove until the developers across the street purchased it. They presented me with certain paperwork that led me to invest a large sum.
Mr. Napier, forgive me for interrupting you, but you're testifying right now, which you're free
Okay.
to do when it is your turn to do that. But
Okay.
if what you're saying, if you want to ask Mr. Brown about it, now is the chance for you to ask Mr. Brown about those things. But if you want to testify and tell me about those things, then you need to wait until it's your turn to testify.
Okay. Sorry again, y'all.
That's okay. I mean, there's a language that goes with being
Yeah.
in court that someone who's not a lawyer doesn't necessarily know. And I'm
Right,
trying
and
to work with you on that issue.
Right, and also we're in pursuit. We're trying to find the right person to represent us. We don't want to just hire anybody, but since this is an emergency, we're responding as an emergency.
Okay.
So I guess what I want to submit to the courts is that I just think that.
Well, Mr. Napier, hang on. Forgive me for interrupting you, but now it sounds like you're making an argument about what relief you want. And I understand. I want to hear all of those things. But
Okay.
right now, procedurally, do you have any questions for Mr. Brown? If you don't have any questions for Mr. Brown, then it will be Mr. Bishop's turn to call another witness, and we will continue to move through the process of evidence.
Okay, my question is, what reason would you have to call people who you don't know squatters, looters, and trespassers? Criminals.
I would just object to that, Your Honor, as it calls for a legal conclusion.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I don't know about the criminals part, but it does sound like there's some cross chatter about characterizing the individuals that were allegedly living in the house as squatters. And it's fair, I think, to ask Mr. Brown why he referred to them in that manner. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Because I know that this gentleman was not occupying Russell Martin's unit. I know that Russell Martin was occupying Russell Martin's unit. And when I see other people in there that were not given the authority to be there, that's what comes to my mind. Also, I know that no one is given permission from me to be in the other 14 units. That's what I know.
No
And
one.
that's why it appears to me
Mr.
to be that way.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Do you have a follow-up question, Mr. Napier?
Yes, I'm saying no one needed his permission if the business was in an agreement with Venture Properties, which he agreed to in 2020. Russell had the authority to lease those units and do contracts because he was under a purchase agreement.
Hang on, Mr. Napier. Ask Mr. Brown, did or didn't Mr. Martin or Mr. Martin have the authority to lease those units? And then let him answer, because I understand the point you're trying to make, but I need you to ask it the right way. Go ahead, Mr. Napier.
Did Mr. Russell Martin, when you guys decided that you weren't doing business together or whatnot, did he have the authority to lease out units to people?
Not at all.
Okay. Did you put that in the purchase agreement?
The purchase agreement was to purchase the building, not to lease it out.
Why would somebody purchase a building, 15 units, without the intentions of leasing out the other units?
Well, he didn't perform. He was working on the building. He was getting it in a shape that would be fundable from a lender, is what he told me. But no, we did not give him any authority to lease any units at any time.
Did you meet with Kenrick Johnson on the property?
That one time.
Were you intimidated by Kenrick Johnson?
It was a very uncomfortable experience with his sister's attorney present at the time. So, he could speak to it as well.
Yeah, he will. Were you confronted by a resident or anybody with a video that had a camera recording you on the property?
Yes, I was.
Were you intimidated by that person?
Yes.
Did you tell them that?
I said, what are you here? What are you doing? I don't know you. I didn't give you the authority to be here.
And they responded by handing you paperwork of one piece of paper?
Yes.
Okay. You just didn't know what was going on with Russell.
Your Honor, I would just object to ask and answer.
I agree, sir.
You don't know.
Excuse me, sir. I'm speaking now. And when I'm speaking, you're not allowed to be speaking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But the objection is sustained. Again, you have made your point. He didn't have visibility into the operations of Mr. Martin's business. I think you've established that. So we can move on from that issue.
Well, since we established that, and he's saying Russell didn't have the authority to lease out properties, were you intimidated by Russell, Mr. Martin?
Mr. Martin was an interesting person, but no, he didn't physically intimidate me.
What made him interesting?
He was belligerent in his speaking.
But in any other terms, you know exactly what he would do as a person if he was a belligerent speaker and a person who would force people out of the property.
I think he was unpredictable. And I think that's why many people were estranged from him, because at one moment in time, he would be your friend. And at another moment in time, it was a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation.
Okay. I understand your attorney's position. He's hired to represent you. But there was no default letter sent in the terms of the contract. Did you send any literature showing that the purchase agreement, outside of the signatures, I saw him put the exhibit up. Were there any documents that you sent to show that this agreement was not being paid on?
Oh, yeah.
Your Honor, I want to object as asked and answered from earlier in the testimony.
Okay.
Okay.
I remember, hang on. I remember it being asked. I don't necessarily remember there being an answer, so I'm going to let Mr. Brown answer. Mr. Brown, go ahead.
So he was supposed to pay the taxes, and based upon what you submitted this morning, there was a tax check paid and it was returned by the city according to the papers that you submitted. So we were shocked to learn that he had not paid the taxes, because we believed him when he said he had paid the taxes. So we have paid the taxes now, and they are paid up for the rest of 2021 and all of 2022. So we're the ones that paid that, along with the insurance and other expenses that we've paid on the building.
Okay. A couple of questions and I'm out your way. Are you familiar with Venture Partners, ATL LLC?
I've answered that.
No.
He's already answered it, Mr. Napier.
What did he say?
Several times.
I don't remember that answer.
He said he had no involvement in it.
Okay. Well, if you look at the last page of the contract, it's signed under Russell Martin Venture Partners, ATL LLC. He knew who the company was because he signed the contract.
But do I know anything about that
That's not my question.
enterprise? No, I don't.
Okay. So you made an agreement with the enterprise that you signed, but you didn't know what it was.
Until that night when we sat down together over Chinese deal,
No further questions.
dinner, I knew nothing about it.
I don't have anything else to say. I'm sorry, Your Honor. That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Bishop, any follow-up questions for Mr. Brown? Well,
None
actually,
from-
I take that back. I actually have a couple of follow-up questions for Mr. Brown, just to make sure I understand. Mr. Brown, so I've been shown the purchase and sale agreement, right? And I understand enough to know that it is an agreement for Mr. Martin and or his company to purchase the remainder of the building that he didn't already own. But it was obviously intended. I mean, the agreement was initiated in February of 2020. But there's no closing or change of ownership before Mr. Martin dies in December of 2022. And so help me, I don't think I understand. Help me understand your understanding of what was the purchase, what were the terms of the purchase and sale agreement? What authority was your belief? What authority did Mr. Martin have? What were his obligations? What payments was he required to make? And did he make those payments?
So it was a bone of contention that We did enter into an agreement. He did not complete that agreement that year. It was 9 months was our agreement. He wanted 12 months and we agreed to 9 months. He did not get that complete. And then he asked me for more time and I was just lenient rather than agreeing to it. I just was lenient and didn't push him out.
Okay, and so I understand that, but so if it was a 9-month agreement, when he was supposed to perform by December of 2020, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and he didn't, and you just sort of let it continue, even though your perception was that he was not performing under the terms of the contract.
Well, I knew for sure he wasn't performing, and I said, you have to. We're losing money every day on this, and you have to be responsible around what we're doing and what we have as expenses ourselves. And so he said, I'll pay the taxes, and then he didn't. So that's where we're at right now.
My brief review of the PSA indicated there was supposed to be some sort of down payment.
He did pay that.
Okay, and did he make any other payments to you for the purchase of the property?
No, he did not.
And he was supposed to be paying the taxes, but you said you subsequently learned that he did not pay the taxes for 21 or 22.
He paid part of 2021, I believe, but he paid none of 2022. So we have paid the rest of 2021, which had been sold to Vesta Partners. And we had to buy it out of tax lien status, and we had to pay for 2022.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Those were I didn't have a clear understanding of what your belief was about what performance was required by Mr. Martin, and so therefore what performance had not occurred. I guess one last question I do have is it fair to say that because you believed Mr. Martin was purchasing the property or was undertaking activity to improve the property or whatever it was, that you weren't actively managing the property, right? Like you weren't actively attempting to rent it. I think I saw something about that there were let me back up and ask a better question. You were not actively managing trying to rent the units that you had, or were you?
I was trying to, and he was blocking it. And he would not let me come on the property. I said, well, show me proof that you have done any work there. And then he would give me little snippets, not even enough to, when you see the condition of the building, you'll understand that he just wasn't doing anything to restore the building at all.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Mr. Bishop, do you have any follow-up questions?
No further questions from Mr. Brown, Your Honor. Ready to call our next witness.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Brown, you are excused as being, from being a witness. Mr. Bishop, go ahead and call your next witness.
We call Mr. Terrence Napier for purposes of cross-examination.
Okay. Mr. Napier, will you raise your right hand? Do you swear the testimony you're about to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Mr. Napier. My name is Tyler Bishop. We've been together for about an hour. Appreciate your time. I promise you that I will try and listen to your whole answer before I respond again, so I don't get caught up in how it switches back and forth between people talking. And if I mess up on that, please let me know. I want to be respectful of what you have to say. I'd like to start with the versions of the purchase and sale agreement that I showed earlier. Were you able to see those?
Yes.
Okay. I would want to ask you some questions about them. Do you want me to put them back up again, or do you think you remember?
I have copies right here in front of me.
Okay. All right. So on the copy attached to our counterclaim, you're not listed as a signatory, right?
Absolutely no.
Okay. And then on the copy with Mr. Johnson's name, you are also not listed as a signatory, right?
Right.
Okay. So we agree then that you have no interest in that purchase and sale agreement.
I don't agree with that.
And tell me why.
Because the purchase and sale agreement was part of the documents that was used to get me to invest into the property.
Right, but do you understand that what they show you versus what you have wind up having a legal right in are two different things, right?
Right, I understand. I put up money and I was securing it. I thought it was secure through the building. If they wouldn't have if I wouldn't have been shown this contract, I wouldn't have invested money into it.
Yes, sir. I hear you, but we've just established that you don't have a right under that contract. Right? You just agree with me. Your name isn't on the signature block for either of the versions of it.
The only objection, disagreement I have with that is that when you invest money and have different contracts, based off of this contract, I am a lien holder technically. So this contract is relevant to me.
Well, so I hear you and I want to get there. I would ask that you please answer my questions with yes or no. And then if explanation is required, I'm happy to hear it. So I want to make sure we have it clean for the judge. We agree that on the face of that contract, you don't have any interest. It doesn't reference you at all, right?
I don't agree.
Okay. Can you show me on this contract where your name is?
Venture Partners ATL LLC.
And is it your position that you have an ownership interest in Venture Properties ATL LLC?
Absolutely.
And what is your interest?
My interest is to get my money back off of what I invested. It's over $600,000. That's my interest.
And so when I say interest, maybe I'm using a legal term of art. Do you own stock in an LLC?
No, we just have an agreement, a couple of documents that was presented to me from Mr. Johnson and Mr. Martin, which were used to get me to put the money up. I was investing into Venture Partners LLC, and I was told and given documents to show that I had at least 10% stake in Venture Properties LLC. And once they sell, I will be paid or in increments before they sell with the last disbursement of money I had gave him. Because he had a lot of people just giving him money, I guess. But yeah, I'm not just gonna say I don't have interest.
Sure. Well, the difficulty, Mr. Napier, is I'm not going to ask and answer my own question, but you have said that you have an interest in the contract, but cannot identify your name anywhere, and you have identified yourself as some kind of stakeholder in Venture Partners ATL.
Yes.
Are you aware that company is out of compliance with the Georgia Secretary of State?
Compliance of an LLC, if you do an agreement, compliance doesn't make you not liable to the agreements that you made under the LLC, unless you file Chapter 7 or Chapter 13, right?
I'm not going to answer your legal question, sir.
It's not a legal question. It's actually an answer. He didn't file bankruptcy or anything. So I would be under the impression whether he was compliant to pay $200 to bring his company compliant through the Georgia Secretary of State or whatnot. I don't think it matters if he's compliant or not.
Well, I'm just probing the depths. You say you have an interest in this company, but you're not taking any steps to make it work like a legitimate business. I'm just asking why.
I have other businesses I'm working on. That's not really necessarily a question to me. I don't live there. I just got money tied up in there.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that okay, I hear you. I'm sorry. You said you want your money back.
Absolutely.
Okay. I don't mean to cut you off. I'm sorry, the delay on this sometimes. I guess what I'm getting at is this: whatever interests or contracts you may have signed with Mr. Martin, that really goes through his estate, right?
I didn't sign a contract with him when he died. I signed a contract before he died. So now it will go through his estate, right?
Right.
But originally we filed the lawsuit because I didn't even know Mr. Martin had passed. I was trying to figure it out because at first I was under the impression that I was kind of getting, my tail pulled. But then once I found out that could be the case, I'm like, I need to do whatever I need to do to secure my investment. And once Mr. Brown had showed up and telling residents and everybody got to go and I'm taking over, it disturbed me. When they called and told me about it, it disturbed me because it also kind of put me at odds with Mr. Johnson.
Does it disturb you to be trying to recover money on contracts that don't give you any explicit ownership interest or property interest, like you say Mr. Brown's conduct did?
Say it again.
I guess my question is this. I mean, you filed this lawsuit, you said, right?
Absolutely.
But you're not an attorney, right?
Absolutely not.
So
Business.
you cannot bring this lawsuit on behalf of anybody but yourself, right?
You don't have to, actually, that's not correct.
Have you ever
Well,
heard of the
actually,
unauthorized
that's
practice of
Mr.
law?
Bishop, that's a legal question. And so I am aware of what the rules are about the fact that Georgia law prohibits an individual who is not a lawyer from representing a corporate entity. Mr. Napier may or may not be aware of that because he is not an attorney. But go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Mr. Napier, what I'm trying to get at with you is, you're telling me about these contracts, you're telling me about your money, you want it back, I hear it, I don't have an opinion on that, but what I would ask you for is, do you have any contract that says you have an ownership, that says Terrence Napier, by virtue of ownership in venture partners or anything else, has an interest in the property at issue?
Absolutely. And that's this emergency hearing. I'm not a lawyer, but I do a lot of business. I understand. The thing is, these things that we're going to present after a lot of things were taken out of Mr. Johnson's unit and Mr. Russell's unit, yeah, that will be presented when we have some sort of deposition through discovery. We will be presenting all of these things. This was an emergency hearing. I had a million things to do. This was important enough for me to stop what I was doing and engage. But of course, we're not prepared for trial. And that's why Mr. Johnson and myself were the ones who decided to take it to court. And that's why Mr. Johnson, who's intimidating everyone, was the one that filed a protective order against your client. All of these are plaintiff things that's been filed. We wasn't trying to defend anything, we're trying to get an understanding. And the best way to get an understanding is through court. This emergency injunction of trespassing and destroying property was just ridiculous to me. And we wasn't prepared for a trial. And when we do have a trial, which we would still be seeking, we're going to have lawyers. But this was an emergency. We're not just going to hire anybody just to show up that don't know what's going on, because you could tell a lawyer anything.
So I just want to ask one question to summarize, or maybe a couple. To be clear, your testimony is you did not bring all relevant evidence to a hearing about restraining you from being on the property. Is that your testimony?
That's not my testimony. My testimony is that all the evidence that you're asking for will be turned over in discovery once we have everything. Of course, we're not ready for trial. Wouldn't sit here and try to have a trial. I'm just going against the fact that he's calling everybody trespassers, looters, and everything under the sun. It's irresponsible. He had police officers pull up over there and harass some of the tenants and all of those things. I think it's irresponsible, and that's why I'm speaking on it. I'm not trying to have a trial today, sir.
Mr. Napier, did I ask you if you were trying to have a trial today?
I'm telling you.
I'm sorry, I need a yes or no answer to that question, Mr. Napier.
Yes.
I did. I asked you. Okay. Are you aware of the litigation privilege, Mr. Napier?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell me what that is?
No.
I'll just tell you, it means that things you say in pleadings are not irresponsible. It's a privilege afforded for folks to try and set out their lawsuit, which, even if you're not having a trial, a hearing like this is what you call an interlocutory hearing to ask for relief between now and trial. And this will be my last question. Do you understand that the goal that we're looking for at this hearing, we're asking for the court to tell us who can and cannot be on that property? Do you understand that's the ask that we're making?
No.
Okay. Is it also your testimony that you came with no documents showing any right for you to possess or be on the property?
No.
I don't think I have any further questions for Mr. Napier at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Napier, you now would be the appropriate time when I said earlier that you were testifying a little bit. Now would be the opportunity for you to do that, right? To tell me what it is you would like for me to know. I'm going to tell you a couple of things. One, I'm going to ask you to try and refrain from making an argument, right? Like try to refrain from telling me how the case should be. What I need you to do is recite facts for me the same way someone would be, if you had a lawyer, you would be taking the stand and the lawyer would say, Mr. Napier, tell me your name. Mr. Napier, how do you have an interest in this property? Mr. Napier, tell me how you know Mr. Martin. I'm just giving you examples, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm just trying to give you some parameters for how you might go about doing that, because it's always a little weird when you have to testify on your own behalf, and you're doing it by yourself. So go ahead, Mr. Napier.
Well, I just want to make it clear that I don't feel like Mr. Johnson is a trespasser or looter. He has no reason to be. I invested into the property because Mr. Martin's documents and my relationship, if knowing factually that Mr. Johnson had been there for the past few years, because I would go visit sometimes. I think one of my biggest problems, though, is that I just think that this is a big misunderstanding, because I don't think Mr. Brown just knew what was going on with Russell's business affairs. And I don't think that Mr. Johnson or tenants over there should be kicked out or ejected because of business practices that Mr. Russell had undergone before he passed or whatnot. So when I hear a statement about trespassing and all these things, of course, those things are criminal activities. So whether you're saying it in court, whether you're saying it behind closed doors, whether you're saying it to somebody having a coffee, when you accuse people of doing criminal activities, that's actually alarming, because criminal activities can cause police involvement, which police have been called over there several times. And that's why we decided to, when they was telling me everything that was going on, I'm like, man, look, we can only handle this in court. So I just think that ejecting people where you don't even know who you're ejecting, because you don't know who lives there. You don't know anything based on not being around. So to make that accusation about how well you know someone and not have the facts, I think that's kind of irresponsible as far as business is concerned. And if that's the case, and you have people over there with children and everything else, if you're going to do that, just kick people out, at least use the marshals or evictions or whatnot, so they can have a chance to pay or defend themselves. But he's not only going against just Kenrick or myself as an investor or T, he's going against people who live there. He's expecting to have an emergency junction and have people go over there and be ejected, and they're not even part of it. They don't know what's going on from the back end. So I just think it's nobody's trying to destroy the building. I think that Mr. Johnson will be able to prove on his own, and he's been the one there making all the enhancements. He's known everything about the building. He has videos, pictures from the roof. He understands that building, the science of that building like no other. He understands that building more so than Mr. Martin did. So I've trusted him. I invested, I believe. And my thing is that I just think I think it would be inappropriate and irresponsible for business people to say that, and you really just don't know. I think you should have a better understanding of what's going on before you start using a legal system that's going to affect other people who just innocent. They're just living down there innocently, and now all of a sudden it's we're in court over even representing people that he don't even know. I just think he doesn't know, and I think that it should be tried as we file this case. I think those facts can come out, but I just don't think I don't think it's fair. And I think Mr. Johnson, I know Mr. Johnson's not a trespasser. I wouldn't invest in a trespasser. I don't know exactly what's going on or what happened with Mr. Martin. Maybe I got scammed, maybe not. But I invested in the papers that I saw the contract and the taxes and all these documents he had. And I also believed in it because he had reputable people putting money behind him, like Mr. Hunter, who will be testifying and subpoenaed to court. So that's pretty much it. I just don't think I think the kicking people out of where they live and he don't even know. And I know for a fact that Mr. Johnson lives there. He's been there for years. It's disturbing to me. That's all.
Okay. Mr. Napier, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. You don't live in this building, right?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. And so I understand that you indicated that there are some tenants that are living in the building.
Mhm.
Usually when a tenant is living in the building, they're paying rent for purposes for permission in exchange for the ability to live there.
Mhm.
Do you know if those tenants are paying rent?
Absolutely. They was paying Kenrick Johnson directly for the past year or so, and he had to show that to me. So he would be the one. That's why a lot of the utilities were paid. And Mr. Martin was a money order cash guy. And I know Mr. Brown will have to attest to that. So Kenrick had total possession of the property. He collected rent from tenants. And sometimes I was there when they would pay him, and he would take the money and give it to Mr. Martin at a later date. I would just be down there hanging out because I had interest in the building across the street. And I've been knowing Mr. Johnson for 30 plus years.
Okay.
So
And so, Mr. Napier, the reason I asked you that question though is, and I think you may have really already answered my second question, which is, so you aren't receiving any of that rent, right? I mean, I understand that from a
No.
business perspective, but the people that live in that building, they're not paying any of that rent to you. Is that right?
right, I don't get it.
Okay. And so all of that, the reason I'm asking those questions is, as I understand, so I understand the larger lawsuit that you guys have brought claiming an interest in the property because of the purchase and sale agreement and your association with the property through the Venture Partners Atlanta. I understand all that, and I agree with your characterization that those larger issues are something that we will get to trial. But what Mr. Brown and the Buckhead Preservation Trust are asking today is to simply enter an order that says, that says only he, Mr. Brown, can control access to all the units that he owns because he's the person who owns them, or the company entity that owns them. And so my question to you for purposes of today is why are you opposed to the request today that Mr. Brown be able to control who enters and exits his property? I understand there's a bigger issue where you say, but you think you have an interest in that property. But for right now, on paper, it's his property. Why do you care or object to his request that he be able to control who enters and exits?
I guess the difference of that's more of a Kenrick question, because my interest is when I saw the documents and saw the accusations, I don't want my friend to be homeless. And I know that he's innocent and I've given money or whatnot. So an ejectment is saying, okay, he can't even be there at his own place. And I've met a couple of people that live there. It's just, I guess it's more so of a compassion thing, because I wouldn't do that. That's
Okay.
all. Kenrick has more interest in the ownership, the deal that has his name tied to it or whatever. So that's more so an issue probably for him to answer.
Okay, I understand. That's fair enough. Thank you, Mr. Napier. I appreciate that. Anything else, Mr. Bishop?
Just one follow-up. Mr. Napier, would you tell me the names of each and every individual you understand to be living at the property?
I know first names, don't know the last name. And
That's fine.
I don't want to give an alias name or anything. They'll be listed in the witness list, I'm pretty sure, for I guess trial purposes. I don't live there. I don't just know all these people personally, but I'm there. I was there enough to see people go in and out, coming out with food out of refrigerators. I see babies. I see active living at that building.
Sure. And do you know any of the names of those people?
I just know one.
Okay, which one is that?
I know Tia Johnson.
Tia Johnson.
Yeah.
And is that the Tia who's online right now on the hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Is she related to Kenrick Johnson?
Absolutely not.
Okay. Is there anybody in the room with you?
No, I got lights. I'm in a room by myself.
Okay. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you.
Mr. Napier, anything you want to add before we move on?
No, I don't want to add anything.
Okay, thank you, sir. You are excused as a witness, Mr. Napier. Mr. Bishop, you may call your next witness.
We'll call Kenrick Johnson for purposes of cross-examination.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, can you please turn on your video? Thank you, sir. You anticipated my request. Thank you. Will you please raise your right hand so I can see it in the camera? Thank you. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth so help you God?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir. You may lower your hand. Go ahead, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Your Honor, and good afternoon, Mr. Johnson. You know me by now. We've been online for a while this afternoon. My name is Tyler Bishop. I represent the defendants. Thank you for your time. Just like I told Mr. Napier, ground rule, I'll ask you a question. Please try and respond with a yes or no. And if you need to explain, that's fine. I'll do my best not to talk over you. I ask you the same. Sometimes, it gets caught with the Zoom, and I want to hear what you have to say. So I'll extend that courtesy to you if you'll return it. And if we have a Zoom glitch, we'll just do it all a second time. And so I appreciate that. Let me start with when did you first meet Russell Martin?
I've been dealing with Russell since about I want to say 98, 99, around that area.
Yes, sir. And how did you first meet him?
I met him doing a demo job. I was doing a demo job at somebody's house, and he was over there just talking and whatnot, because I do a lot of demo projects and junk removal deals and stuff.
And so this was not, to be clear, at the property we're talking about. This is some other property.
Yeah. And then we just been keeping in contact, hanging out ever since.
Understood. How did you first come to the property at issue?
I moved one of the tenants out.
And when was this?
I want to say maybe around 2000, 2001, 2002. No, it was a long time ago. I don't remember around what year and date or anything like that.
Understood. And so you currently reside at Unit 11, is that correct?
Yes.
And you've been living there since 2016, is that right?
I've lived for a long time.
Sorry, force of habit. I just realized we don't have a court reporter, and I was like, wait, is that a yes? But I realized there's nobody taking it down. So go ahead.
And so how did you first come to live in Unit 11?
Well, me and Russell was doing deals here at the property. I was doing all the maintenance on the land. I was pruning the trees, fixing the fences. There's a tree growing up against the back wall. I had to prune that because neighbors kept complaining about it. It kept getting too big. And from there, he was talking about how he was trying to buy this property from somebody. He wanted me to invest some money with him on it. At the time, I didn't really have the money, so I turned to somebody that did. And, I had to convince him to come over to meet Russell, and we went from there.
So did you ever sign a written agreement with Mr. Martin to take up residence in Unit 11?
Yes.
And I didn't see that attached to the lawsuit. When did you sign this agreement?
I signed this agreement a while back. Me and Russell signed plenty of different agreements on different occasions for different things, for different reasons.
Okay. But in terms of tenancy, an agreement for you to stay in Unit 11, what year did you sign that?
From the time, well, let's see, what year was it? I have it on the, I don't, you know what? I can't get the paperwork because he broke in the unit and he took all my paperwork. I had to look through some more, see if I could find a date on it, but he took most of my stuff out of my units, like my guns, stuff like that, my weapons. He took those also. But go ahead.
And when you say he, are you referring to Mr. Napier?
No, I'm referring to Mr. Brown. He broke in the unit and stole items out of my unit. So the paperwork was missing. The unit was trashed. My weapons was missing. And that's what you asked me. So
well, and so when somebody signs a contract for them to live somewhere, they typically know how long they're allowed to live there, right?
Right.
Okay. so you don't remember when you signed this agreement with Mr. Martin, correct?
Well, I don't have a date. I
Okay.
can't remember it offhand. It was mostly like month to month, but
Okay,
that's,
it was okay. But when did it expire is my question.
I didn't have the expiration date basically because I was steady here on the property doing all the work. And my expiration date is when the building has sold. So I can get my money for all the work and the sweat equity I put into the building.
Okay.
You know, I'm up under the ground. I'm doing plumbing. I'm dropping ceilings to put new lines in. I'm doing everything. I'm painting. I'm pressure washing.
I'm hearing you. I just I'm going to use a legal term of art. It's not a trick question. Have you ever heard of the statute of frauds?
Okay. What's that have to do with anything?
Well, it's a legal rule that says if you have a contract that's going to take longer than a year, it's got to be in writing. That's not a question. I'm just telling you because I want to have a level playing field with you. I know you're representing yourself. I guess my question is this: is the whole issue today is whether you have a legal right to be there, and what you're telling me is there's some piece of paper which conveniently says you do, but we just haven't seen it.
Yes, I live here. Been living here for a long time. And I got money and time invested.
Yes, sir. But
Forgive me, Mr. Bishop, for interrupting. Quick question. Was Mr. Martin also living in Unit 11?
No, Mr. Martin moved to another unit.
Oh, okay.
When
Do you know which one?
Yeah, he was supposed to be in 12
Mhm.
after his surgery because we had it all set up for him. I was putting a new
Right.
bed in there for him, so that's where he's going to be at. But I mean, because we all had 2 bedrooms, so sometimes he stay in 11, and sometimes he'd go to 12, whatever. Because I had 11 set up where heat, TV, everything you need to
Okay.
day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Sorry for the interruption,
ma'am.
Mr. Bishop.
not at all, Your Honor. We appreciate it. Thank you. All right, Mr. Johnson. So I guess moving right along here, I mean, isn't it true that nobody was living there other than Mr. Martin in January and February of this year?
No, I was living there.
Um,
I wasn't there all the time because I do a lot of demo work and junk removal. So sometimes I go out of town, other places do works, and I come right back.
well, and so you're a businessman. You understand, like, when somebody invests sweat equity for like an ownership interest, you sign a written agreement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but you don't have. You said you had an agreement for some amount of tenancy, but you don't have a written agreement to own Unit 11, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Why is that not attached to your lawsuit?
Terrence Napier is my partner on it, and I give certain things to him. But at the same time, me and Russell was partner on everything in this building, as far as the venture properties, everything that's dealing with this building. Me and Russell was partners. So
Well,
we did
and
everything together, and we lived like brothers best because me and him stayed in the unit together. We cooked together. We did a lot of stuff together.
I hear you, but I guess what I'm just asking is, anything that you co-owned with Russell, you'd have to go get out of the probate estate to own it entirely yourself, right?
Right, and my name was on a purchase agreement. I signed it that night. Me, Russell, Mr. Brown, pulled up. I remember the whole dinner meeting that they was talking about. I remember all of that.
Okay. So you were at the dinner place with him?
No, I was at the building.
Okay.
And that's where I met them at. But I do have text messages. I can try to look and see.
Well, I appreciate
phones.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, what I'm getting to is, as the judge told Mr. Napier, what we're talking about today is determining who has the right to be on the property and who doesn't. And so, You know, my question is just, if they existed, why didn't we see them at this hearing? Why weren't they attached to your lawsuit? I mean, it seems like claiming ownership interest in a condo unit or an entire building is important enough to document.
Mr. Bishop, I'm just going to say, if there was a lawyer here, he would be objecting to your argumentative questions. So let's try and keep it to asking him about facts. Thank you.
Understood, Your Honor. Let me, you heard Mr. Brown's testimony about going to the Chinese restaurant to execute the agreement, correct?
I heard about that. But
Why
see,
weren't
I
you
live
there?
here. Mr. Brown doesn't. Mr. Brown hasn't even been to the building that many times. Even the 7 times that he mentioned, he probably been here less than that.
Okay.
He don't come to the building. He ain't doing any of the maintenance, any of the tools and stuff that's here. I purchased those tools. I'm the one that's doing all the work, so I had to break all the tools in. He don't have no equity into this building whatsoever, besides his name being on paperwork. Like my name is on paperwork. All of our names is on paperwork.
Okay.
And
So
him and Russell didn't get along. Me and Russell was kind of cool, interested. No, it wasn't like that. Now that night when they had their meeting, I wasn't at the meeting at the restaurant. They talked. Russell already told me about that, but he said he's going to bring him here so we could all sign them. But you know.
Okay, well, let's dig further into that. I'm going to share my screen with you so we can take a look at these at these agreements again. Please let me know when you can see the screen share. Can you see what I got on my screen?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, so I'll just represent to you, this is Exhibit A that we looked at with Mr. Brown and the signature page and of the document we attached to our counterclaim. And you would agree with me that your signature is not on that document, correct?
I don't know what type of wizardry that Lou done to not have my signature on that document, but to me, I filed a restraining order against Lou because I'm afraid of him and afraid of the things that he can do. Like the things he tell me, hey, I got big powerful lawyers and I got judges on payroll. You'll be out of here in 30 days. That's what he told me.
I want to look at with you one of the documents that you tendered. Can you see what I'm showing you now?
Yeah. Let's see if I can.
Are you looking at a document that's called dismissal of temporary protective order? I'll zoom in some.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned that you went and got a protective order against him. I was wondering if this is what you were referring to.
Yeah, I was filing that. Yeah.
Okay, so you agree with me here that where it's checked, it says it's checked because petitioner failed to prove by a preponderance of the evidence repeated facts of surveilling and contacting. Those are the boxes that are checked, right?
Let's see. Okay. Yeah, but do you agree that the sticky note right there is what a judge has said, right?
I'm
Right
sorry,
there.
Mr. Johnson,
Well,
I'll ask the question.
Okay.
So I read the check boxes correctly, right?
I believe so. You read the check box correctly. Now, can I ask a question?
No, sir.
Did you read? Oh, I can't.
No,
Okay.
sir.
Mr. Johnson, as I was telling Mr. Napier earlier, you'll have an opportunity to testify on your own. But I will say, in fairness, if you don't understand the question that you are being asked, you may ask for clarification of the question.
Okay.
So go ahead.
Well, and so I just, the reason I showed that to you, Mr. Johnson, was just so that we could agree that there was never a protective order entered against Mr. Brown, correct?
I want to file another one in Fulton County.
You said you want to?
I did. I found another one in Fulton County, and I'm waiting to serve him.
Okay. All right. So I want to, going back to talking about the contract, can you still see my screen?
Yeah, I can see him.
Okay, and this is the version with your signature on it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so is it your testimony that this was the original document as signed at the Chinese restaurant, and then it was brought back to you and you signed it separately?
Let's see. Hold on. Why would I sign something separately? Why wouldn't we all sign it together?
Well, because you told me you weren't at the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, but don't mean that the document was signed at the Chinese restaurant either, right?
So are you telling me then that it's your testimony that Mr. Brown and Mr. Martin did not sign it at the Chinese restaurant?
My testimony was answered earlier.
Hang on. So it would be helpful to me because there's a lot of question. It would be helpful to me to just ask directly. So Mr. Johnson, when you signed, I think I understood you to say that you signed the document at the apartment building that evening, is that right?
Yes, they came to the building.
Okay, and when you signed the document, were Mr. Brown and Mr. Martin present?
Yes.
Did they sign the document in front of you?
Yes.
Or had they already signed it?
No, they signed it first on top of the car.
Okay.
They signed it first. I was the third person to sign.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Yeah.
And thank you, Your Honor. And I guess, Mr. Johnson, do you remember what Mr. Brown was wearing when you all executed this?
I don't recall me looking at his attire to say, hey, make sure you got on the blue tie or anything like that. No, I don't. It was maybe somewhere like I guess like a polo shirt and pants, maybe.
Okay. And
I'm not for sure.
Okay. And you said they signed on top of a car, right?
Top of a car.
You said that's where the contract was signed, right?
Yeah, on top of a car.
Okay. What type of car was it?
Red BMW.
If I share my screen back with you real quick, I guess I just want to ask you, you made a comment earlier about the version of the contract attached to the complaint. I guess my question is, here where your signature is on the other document, does it appear that it's been altered in any way or that things been whited out?
Well, I'm not for sure either way. I mean, I figure that's what we're going to court for. So all the evidence can be put into play then. But I'm not a professional at seeing if anything been whited out or anything like that. I'm not.
And so what time was it when you signed this contract?
Long time ago. I don't remember the exact time. I
Was
couldn't tell you it was Monday or Wednesday. I couldn't tell you it was 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock.
Okay. So you don't know if the sun was up or down?
Mr. Bishop?
It was more.
I feel like you've made your point. We are still in a TRO. This is not the full-blown hearing and the full-blown trial of this matter. And so I feel like we can move on.
Understood, Your Honor, and I'm happy to do so. Mr. Johnson, let's switch gears. When did you first learn of Mr. Martin's death?
Pretty much what Lou told me.
Okay.
I mean, because I received a few phone calls. I went searching for him, especially when I didn't hear anything from him. When Lou had started going to all the units, I was trying to get into contact with Russell then. But I couldn't get anything because I knew he had surgery and I know about HIPAA rules. So, I can't really get any information.
So you knew that he was in the hospital?
Yeah.
Which hospital did he go to?
Piedmont.
Did you take him to the hospital?
No.
Did you visit him in the hospital?
No.
When did you first learn that Mr. Brown was coming to the building?
One day it rained real heavy, and I just got back in town from visiting my parents up in Cincinnati. And I see two of the doors kicked in. So my first thing was to call Russell, leave him a message, because I figured it had to be Lou, because he always told me that Lou might try to come and take the building from him or try to lock him out while he's gone. And my job is to make sure nothing like that happens, to be here on property so I can confront him like, hey, you know, Russell will be right back. He's in surgery, whatever case may be, because they never liked each other for whatever our reason. And he felt like Lou was always trying to do some shady stuff towards him or extort him or whatnot. I don't know all the details, but we did talk a lot.
You were online when Mr. Napier was cross-examining Mr. Brown, correct? You could hear the proceeding.
Mm-hmm.
And you heard Mr. Brown say that he had a key to the units, right?
He lied.
And or is it your testimony that the door was kicked into unit 11?
When I got to unit 11, everything's been changed. The lock has been changed. Two of the other units' doors are still cracked open from it being kicked in. So I don't know how he got in 11, but he was in there. Then he called me and openly admitted that he was in 11. Oh, I walked in 11 and I was in there and you were not in there. And I'm saying, how do you know where I'm at, what I'm supposed to be doing? You weren't even supposed to be in 11. Then I asked him what happened to my weapons. Oh, well. And then he went on to talk about something else. I kept repeating the asking. So before I did anything as far as calling the police, I figured that once I talked to Russell, because I knew their relationship, I could get Russell to get him to give me back my weapons. So it wouldn't have to go that route. And then here we are, after he done sent numerous amount of people jumping over the fence, some of my tools come up missing. I mean, that's scary to me. Imagine you at home and you walk outside and someone's jumping over your fence, walking around your property. That's a scary sight, right? I mean, you know, somebody at your house, you don't know what's going on, or you pull up and somebody's just randomly coming out of your apartment or your house. That's a scary sight, right?
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, I'll ask the question.
Oh, okay. But you can't answer that one?
I asked the questions, Mr. Johnson. So let me ask you this. You're living there and the maintenance teams that Mr. Brown hired show up to do work. You'd think that's pretty normal, right?
I didn't see a maintenance team. All I seen was guys jumping over the fence, coming in. If it was a maintenance team, they'd come through the front. Or they could have called my phone, right? Could have called my phone. Hey, I'm the maintenance team here.
Is your testimony that people were jumping the fence before or after you changed the gate locks?
People's been jumping the fence before, during, and after.
So, but you've just admitted to me that you did change the gate locks, correct?
I'm not admitting to you that I changed the gate locks.
Well, then why would you say that people jump before, during, and after?
People been jumping that fence, and I just been quietly asking them to leave. And I don't believe none of them name was Donnie or any place like that he had mentioned, because he kept mentioning that name. I don't recall meeting somebody named Donnie. And I met I think the guy was like maybe Mexican or something like that, but he didn't look like any plumber or electrician or like that I've known, because most time the plumber and electrician they come with a uniform on. He just like a regular old thug with a hoodie on and gold teeth all in his mouth.
So I guess my question is this:
And
did you or did you not change the gate locks on the outside of the building?
I don't have to change the gate locks or anything like that.
I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson, that requires a yes or no answer. Yes or no, did you change the gate locks?
No.
So why hasn't Mr. Brown been able to get in?
Because he never had any locks in the beginning.
So you put locks on for the first time?
The last time I known anything about any type of locks being exchanged is when he had changed the locks on my unit. After he done broke in.
Let me go back. Were there ever locks on the gates to the building?
Bike locks.
And it's your testimony that you never took those off?
Oh yeah, I took the bike locks off.
Did you
Because-
replace with new locks?
No, why would I place the gate with new locks? No, I mean, there was bike locks. They went through the fence and around a loop. That's the way I come in and out. Now, he didn't do he put gate locks on 2 of the gates and then do the third one. So I had to come in from the third one. I'm saying, why is these locked? They shouldn't be locked. They shouldn't have any locks on it. So I took them off.
And your testimony is they're sitting out there unlocked right now. You never put another lock on it. Anyone could walk right in.
No, they had to put a new lock on them, but that's a fire hazard to have bike chains locks on gates when someone lives in the building, right?
So it's your testimony that I could walk up right now, walk in on any of the gates. There's no locks.
I never said that.
Okay.
The locks on the gates are still there, not the bike locks. There's no more door locks on the gates. They've been there.
Okay. And but
And
Mr.
hold on, as his employee admitted when he was parked in the truck, yeah, I just had to come in and pop the lock. So that's how they got in, because they popped the gate lock, and then they went from there to start popping locks to all the doors and kicking doors in.
And what time frame was this you're talking about? Was this January?
Yes,
Okay. So it's your testimony that
actually, yeah, January. Yeah,
okay. So you're telling me there's no locks on there now then?
you just asked me the same question like 4 times.
Hang on. Hey, hang on, both of you. This is really not that complicated. Are there locks on the gate right now?
This-
As we
Yeah,
sit here?
the same locks that have been on the gate are still there.
And it is a key lock, and that's different than the bike lock thing that you were talking about. Is that right, sir?
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Go ahead,
ma'am.
Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Your Honor. And Mr. Brown doesn't have these keys, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then you are effectively in total control of the building, right?
Mr. Brown never had any keys to the building at all.
That's not the question that I'm asking, Mr. Johnson. I'm asking, he can't get in right now to the new key locks because he doesn't have the keys, right?
He been getting in by
No, so
popping the locks.
That needs a yes or no answer.
He can't get in.
And you agree with me that condominium unit residents can't bar other condo owners from the property or common areas, correct?
I don't know about other condo areas or anything like that. So he's not the owner, so I don't know. I can't say what other people.
And you talked about changing locks on the units themselves. Now I'm talking about, and you tell me if I'm summarizing your testimony correctly. You testified that Mr. Brown changed unit locks.
Say again?
Is it your testimony that Mr. Brown changed locks on the units? I'm talking about the units now.
He changed the locks on unit 11.
And did you drill out that lock?
That's my unit. It shouldn't have been changed. It should never been entered.
I'm sorry. I'll ask it where you have to give a yes or no answer. You did drill out that lock, didn't you?
No.
Now, how did you get back in?
Call the locksmith.
Did the locksmith drill out that lock?
No.
How did he get in?
He's a locksmith. That's what they do. He rekeyed it.
How many times have you seen Mr. Brown face to face at the building?
I seen Mr. Brown one time face to face at the building. maybe maybe about 3 times in total. Yeah, 3 times in total. When first time we met, and 2 other times since then, but I haven't seen him since. Until he came back, even though he kept saying it was his somebody else's lawyer, but he kept shouting that was his lawyer. And then he came back with the police a couple times, all rowdy up.
And each time that he came by where you were there, you didn't let him in, did you?
Well, actually, the first time he didn't even ask to come in, and I didn't
That's a
have
yes or
to.
no
I mean, I
question.
would stand out the way. He didn't say anything to me about coming in. He was just trying to have court in the front yard. That's it. And
So the answer to my question then is no, he didn't get let in.
you asked that I wasn't keeping him from coming in. He didn't come to the door. He just came to talk to me about court and how I should leave and how I got big powerful lawyers and they're gonna kick me out of my ass. And he got judges on payroll, and that was his whole testimony.
Well, it's not testimony unless you swear. But so I just want to ask
right.
one.
You're right. Well, that's what he said to me.
And so was the first time over there? Is that you contend when y'all signed the agreement on the car?
Yeah.
Um,
And he was already, matter of fact, when I got here, because he was here before I was here, he was already inside. He was coming out.
okay, but never inside since then on the other 2 trips, right?
Nah, not. He just came up with the police and was yelling, and the police officer actually told him to leave.
So other than, well, would it be more accurate to characterize the police officers as saying that this was a dispute that y'all were going to take up in court?
Yeah, we told the police officer that we got everything in court, and they said okay. He was lying to the police officer, said he'd never been served until we showed the police officer the video of us serving him. And then the police officer told him he need to leave the building because he's not going to. It's more of a civil matter, and you know.
So a couple of wrap-up questions here. Other than the purchase and sale agreement that we talked about, what documents do you contend give you the right to be in Unit 11 or on the premises?
The documents I have, I was going to show that we had.
Well, hang on. Mr. Bishop, you asked him what documents he has to show. I understand all that. In fairness, Mr. Johnson, just because you don't have them here doesn't mean you can't tell me that they exist and what you understand them to say, right? So I think it would be a fair way of asking it for my benefit for Mr. Johnson. Do you have documents that you believe give you the authority to live in Unit 11 or to otherwise have authority over the building?
Yes, I have a.
Okay.
Yeah.
And can you tell me what those documents are?
I have a lease agreement that me and Russell Martin have worked out for me to have control of all the units as far as bringing tenants in and for which units is ready and which units are not, and the upgrades and upkeeps.
Okay, and do you have any other documents?
Um,
Well, hang on, let me ask for clarification there. I apologize, Mr. Johnson. You said you have a lease agreement, and earlier you talked about a lease agreement that you had for Unit 11.
yes.
And the one you were just talking about that you said gave you authority to like collect rents and stuff with the tenants, is that a different document?
Yeah, but
Okay.
he actually a lot of my documents, I believe Mr. Brown has taken out of my unit. So I've been going through paperwork and trying to find other stuff. I have a lot of email stuff I've been trying to go through to pull up stuff and dates and everything.
Right.
So
I understand that, Mr. Johnson. That's why I'm asking you that.
and everything I find, I'll make sure I was going to give it to the lawyer that I find so he can help me go through everything and I can present stuff correctly.
Okay, I understand that. I just was, usually, if we have an understanding of why we're authorized to do certain things. And so that's what I'm asking you is, and Mr. Bishop can take issue with whether you have documents or not, whether you're able to show those documents. But my question is just, you seem to have an understanding that you had authority, you had the right to live in Unit 11, and that you had authority over the building in some manner. And so
Yes.
I'm asking, what is it that gave you that belief? And I think I heard you say you had a lease agreement with Mr. Martin for Unit 11, and that you had some additional agreement with Mr. Martin for you to sort of manage the property and collect rents in the other units. Is that right?
Yes. 'Cause,
Okay.
me and Mr. Martin was also business partner.
Okay.
So,
And did you have any other agreements with Mr. Martin or any other documents that you might point to that you think gave you the authority for the building?
Hold on, my phone voice just went out. I might have hit the button by mistake. Hold on. Okay, I think. Okay, hello.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just saying you've identified two documents, and then you said something about having a business interest. So do you have, was that an agreement between you and Mr. Martin that was reduced to writing at some point? So do you have an agreement with him about your ownership interest in his business or in the building?
Yes, we did.
Okay. Okay. I think that answers what I was trying to get to in terms of a more direct point. I'm sorry I keep hijacking you, Mr. Bishop. I apologize.
Not at all, Your Honor. I appreciate the help and always try and proceed appropriately with pro se litigants to make sure they have a full and fair opportunity to be heard. So
I'm going to make sure documents that I have.
Mr. Johnson, your audio is breaking up, right? So I heard you say I'm going to make sure, but I didn't hear anything after that.
I'm going to make sure all documents that I have with Mr. Martin will be submitted.
Okay. Mr. Bishop, any additional questions for Mr. Johnson?
just to follow up, Mr. Johnson, how are you related to Tia Johnson?
No.
Okay. But she's a tenant in Unit 6, you say?
Yeah.
When did she start living in Unit 6?
She had the place for about I want to say about a year now. And I know she wanted to do some upgrades. So I told her I was going to do some upgrades in the unit as far as put a new cabinet in or something like that. But that's about it. But yeah, she's been
And
there.
did she have a written lease agreement?
Yes.
And who signed that on behalf of the property?
Mr. Martin.
So you're saying that he signed it before he died?
Yes.
What other tenants are living at the property?
I asked them would they want their names to be involved in this because some people don't want to be involved in anything. So, I can get them all information. They said this, they don't want to be involved in any type of court stuff, but just let them know what's going on.
Well, whether they want to be involved is irrelevant, Mr. Johnson. You have an obligation to tell me their names if you know them.
Mm-hmm. So by me going to all the units to get you all their names so you can try to, evict them?
I'm not going to discuss my strategy, Mr. Johnson, but sitting here now, you have an obligation to tell me the names of every person you know to be residing there. So can we start?
Well, I would talk to them about me giving their names, and then we go from there.
Your Honor, I'd ask you to instruct the witness to answer.
So, Mr. Johnson, it is a fair question. If you have knowledge of the individuals that are residing in the property in the individual units, I'm not aware of any reason that you would be justified in refusing to provide that information.
Okay. Well, I gotta get their last names because all of them I don't really know their names like that.
Okay,
I mean,
well, that's fine. You can only testify about the knowledge that you have, but
Yeah.
if you have that knowledge, you have to answer the question.
Yeah, no, I don't really know most of their names or anything like that, so I would have to go around and get their name. That's why I said I'll just talk to them about, and then I can go from there. But
Sure. Well, you said you'd have to get last names, so why don't you tell me the first names that you know?
I repeat, I don't really know everybody's names like that. So, because I don't really talk to them on an everyday basis.
So I just want to make sure, I mean, you understand you're under oath to tell the truth, right?
Right. Okay.
And your testimony right now is you don't know anyone else's first name other than Tia. Nobody.
That's the only one I normally talk to when I see her.
Then no, sir, that's not the question I asked you. I said nobody else's first name at all.
Gerald,
Gerald?
Danny.
Okay. And what units do they live in?
See, which one Gerald live in? I think we live in 10 and 8.
And Danny's at 8?
Yeah.
Can you tell me, if you don't know their names, can you tell me which other units are occupied? I've got 10, 8, and 6, and 11 for you. Which others?
6, 15, 14.
Hang on 1 second. Mr. Johnson, so you're moving around, and not only is that making me a little bit seasick, but also it causes the problem of sometimes you go in and out of service. So I've gotten to be a pro at this over 3 years now of doing Zoom hearings. So if you need to move, I understand that, but tell us that you're doing that. We'll take a break for a second for you to go to a different location. If you could try not to walk around while you're testifying, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am. I'm a first timer. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's fine. I totally understand. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Go ahead.
All right, so we're wrapping up, Mr. Johnson. I've got 6, 8, 10, 11, 14, 15. Anything else?
5, 4. Second 4.
And that's it?
As of right, yeah. I believe so, yeah.
And do you understand that Mr. Russell's estate is tied up in the court system for probate right now since he died?
Not really.
Okay. Okay. Well, it's not a trick question. I'm just asking, like, since he's dead, do you know that any business agreements between you and Mr. Martin have to be resolved with whatever happens when his estate goes through the probate court and they appoint somebody to wrap up his affairs? It's not a trick question. I was asking if you generally knew that.
No, I'll go get a lawyer, let him handle all that and try to smooth everything out.
Okay. Your Honor, I think that's all the questions I have for Mr. Johnson. I'm ready to move to Ms. Johnson and wrap up.
Okay, Mr. Johnson, same thing I said to Mr. Napier earlier. Well, actually, let me ask this. Mr. Napier, do you have any questions for Mr. Johnson?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Mr. Johnson,
Yes.
do you understand that the ejectment is kicking you out of your own home?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear that word. Could you say that again, Mr.
Does
Napier?
Mr. Johnson understand that this proceeding is to kick him out of his own home?
No.
This proceeding is to kick you out of your home as a
Well,
trespass.
actually, I will be in charge of what the proceedings
Okay, I'm sorry for
are
trying to be
not.
a
That's a legal
dog.
characterization.
I
That's
got
okay.
a little
Go
ahead of
ahead.
myself. My time
okay.
like, look, when you sign the agreement with Russell, the original agreement, did you think that you had to report to Lou about tenants or any other thing, or did you just feel like you had the authority if something happened to anybody in the deal? Because once Russell passed, did you really believe that you had the authority and the ability and authority to run the property? What would make you think that you should be the one in control of the property?
When Russell was alive, he gave me all the authority to run the property, deal with the tenants, because he didn't deal with people too well on certain issues. And I did. I was good at that.
You was good. Okay.
And I did all the maintenance on the property, all the upkeeps, repairs, remodels.
Did you look at the pictures that was submitted to the courts of the property? Did you look at them from that Lou or his people had taken?
Yes.
Do you have any idea why these pictures were taken?
No, I do.
Did those units that were outside, were they trash or did they work?
It was trash.
Because if you have something sitting outside for a long time that's electric, it may get rain on it.
Yeah, them units
What
been
about
out there.
these
Wow.
sinks that were submitted? Are those trash?
Can you lift it up a little higher, please,
The
sir?
sinks.
Trash.
These air conditioning units.
Trash.
Where? Why is this picture? What's this picture?
That's a cylinder I dropped and replaced. We had to move the electrical over. It wasn't centered. And they wanted different lighting in there besides that ceiling fan.
Where are the antiques that I heard Mr. Brown talking about? He said there was antiques in your unit.
No. Well, no antiques in my unit.
Was this contract that you presented to me and Russell presented to me, which Teague also verified, did you alter the document and add your name to the document in order for you and Russell to trick me out of investing into this property?
Your Honor, I would just object to the foundation. Teague, whoever that is, has not testified. So to the extent we're talking about verification of a document by a non-party, we would object to that foundation.
I agree with you, but I think the question itself is fair, is he's asking Mr. Johnson if Mr. Johnson put his name on that document, and if he did, for what, to what end? And I think that's a fair question. So go ahead, Mr. Napier.
Okay, thank you. Did you guys alter the documents and add your name to make me feel comfortable with putting money behind the building, or was your name already on the document legally, and you, as you said, y'all all signed it together, and this was a legitimate document that was used to tell me that it was a cool deal to, you know, put money into it because I'll be paid back?
Yes. We legally signed the documents, gave you the original copy. So you know that everything's legit.
Are you a partner in Venture Partners ATL LLC?
Yes.
Did you guys pay taxes under Venture Partners ATL LLC, which was presented to me to make me comfortable with spending the money?
Yes.
Do you know why Mr. Brown says that he wasn't even familiar with this company? I'm confused. Do you know why, or why wouldn't he be familiar with this company if you guys showed me an agreement with all your names on it in Venture Partners ATL? I don't understand that.
He's familiar with the company.
So let me interrupt. I feel, Mr. Napier, I absolutely understand why you want to ask these questions, but, and they probably are relevant to the bigger issue about which you filed your lawsuit. But I don't know that they're relevant to the determination that the court has to make today as to whether I should enter any sort of temporary restraining order, limiting anybody's access to the property.
Okay.
So no, that's okay. Like I said, I understand why you're asking those questions and you want to know the answers to those things. I'm just not sure it's relevant to today's decision making.
Okay.
So,
Go ahead, Mr. Napier.
Mr. Johnson,
yes.
have you looted or damaged anything at that property since you've been there?
No.
Have you enhanced the property or made any repairs to it recently?
Yes.
What repairs were made recently?
Plumbing. Had to go up under both units. Put new lines in, the main pipeline in.
Did you put the lines in, or did a company put the lines in?
Had a company put the lines in so I could have insurance on it. You know, as far as the guarantee.
What company did you use to put the lines in?
What's the name? They blue, orange.
Barty?
That's the one.
So the documents that you showed me about the estimate on the repairs, do you remember how much that was?
Like 6,000-7,000. Then we did one on the other side. That was 9,000.
When did this happen?
I want to say about a month and a half ago, maybe somewhere around in there. Actually, no, in January. I've been dealing with plumbing issues since January.
Since January. How many times have plumbers been there to repair the building?
About probably about 11 times.
Do you have the receipts showing the repair that was done and the plumbing companies that done it?
Yeah.
So when I came to the property, when I came back from Vegas, and Barty was there, and they had a whole crew there working, Lou didn't send them there to do that work?
No.
Where are the air conditioning units?
They're trash.
Where are the sinks?
Those trash.
Have you installed any new sinks or any new toilets?
Yes. Install new sinks, new toilets.
Who paid for it?
You did.
When I came down there, and I was there today about the plumber that supposedly came, are you referring to the guy that we got pictures of and videos that was driving a red Charger with tinted windows?
Yeah, that's the one that jumped the fence.
What did you do after he jumped the fence and he came over there? What did you do after he left?
I asked him to leave.
After he left, what did you do?
I took pictures. I called Lou. I talked to Lou about it. He said, "Oh no, I sent him over there. I told him to jump the fence." But he had tools and stuff in his hand that he was taking out that I made him put back down. He said, "Oh, I just seen these."
Okay. How many weapons are you missing?
4.
Did you file a police report?
Yep. Before the county.
How many times have you been to the police department on this matter?
About 3 or 4 different times.
So you filed, what made you feel like you had to involve the police from a protective standpoint?
Because when I talked to Lou about it, first he kept saying that he don't have nothing to do with my guns. Then he said, "Well, you're not getting them back." Then he said, "Well, I don't know who been in your unit, but I was in there. But I don't know who took the guns, but I was in there." He just kept giving me the runaround like he want to keep my weapons, and I just have a fear that one day he may send somebody over there with my own weapons. I don't know.
Your Honor, I would just object that all this is hearsay.
Sustained.
Okay. Are you intimidated by Lou?
Yes, I am. He showed it numerous amount of times.
I saw the document that was presented. I read something about well, I guess I won't even speak on that. But these pictures, for instance, this is a picture of what? This is what they submitted.
Cow manure.
Where is it at right now?
In the same location.
What is this?
Hallway.
You see this? Is that gate opened or closed?
The gate.
Can you see it?
Yeah, I can see it. Look like the gate is open.
Oh,
Hold
okay.
on, hold on. Can you bring it a little closer?
There it is. You see?
Oh no, that gate closed from this
No.
angle. Yeah.
Look at it. The gate.
Hey, hang on. He can't see it clearly to the extent that
Okay.
he can. He said it was closed and he said it was open. I mean, the picture
Okay.
is what the picture is.
Okay, well, what was submitted to the court? If the courts look at it, it's clear that the lawyer that he bought with him, they're behind the gate. When you were called about Lou and his lawyer being on location, where were they at when you pulled up?
They was in the front. Front of
Where
the
were they
building.
coming from? Where were they coming from?
Inside the building.
If you can't see it, you can't see it. Can you see that ladder?
Yes, I see that ladder.
Where is that ladder?
I'm sorry, I gotta move again. I'm sorry. But right here. I was doing some electrical work up in there. That's the ladder.
That's the ladder.
Yes, sir.
See what this is? It's another picture.
Yep.
Where is this at?
I don't know right now.
Okay. So the pictures, because when I looked at them when they were submitted, I thought it was being like you was in here damaging the place or whatnot. Do you even know offhand, if I show you this picture, do you know what unit this is?
14.
You see this?
Yeah.
When was that posted?
That was posted in, I want to say sometime.
Don't worry about it. It looked like you were upstairs.
Yeah.
You see this picture?
Yes.
How recent was this picture?
That picture was in January. Had to be.
What's back
Yeah.
there right now?
Nothing I can show.
No, that's fine. So you're not vandalizing the place. You're not making the property value go down. You're only investing more money into the place because we under the impression that you should, based on being Russ' business partner, as if I have a business partner in the venture. If I passed or my demise was to come, I would assume that who I'm partners with, they would be held responsible for that.
Your Honor,
Yeah.
I would just object as assuming facts, not in evidence.
Not assuming, I'm talking about what I would do.
Mr. Napier, there's an objection. Let me
Okay.
answer. I
I'm
understand.
sorry.
I think the point's been made. Let's just move on.
Okay, well, where do you live?
Unit 11.
Do you plan on paying me back the money that I?
Mr. Napier, forgive me for interrupting, but again, your interest and any issue is part of the larger lawsuit, but it's not part of what we're focused on today.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure I don't have to sue Mr. Johnson also.
Okay, I understand that, and but again, any interest that you have in the property is part of the larger lawsuit, but it's not
Okay.
necessarily part of today's issues.
Okay. Well,
Anything else, Mr. Napier, for Mr. Johnson?
no, my last thing is that what are you gonna do if you get kicked out of a place that you had an agreement to be in?
I'll be homeless.
That's all.
Mr. Johnson, do you have anything you would like to add on your own behalf in terms of facts that you feel like the court should know to take into consider what the request is that Mr. Brown, through his lawyer, has made about access to the property?
My fear of his access to the property is the dangers that he's going to bring with him. Honestly, that's my fear. From the stuff that he's been saying to me face to face, and by my weapons being missing, I just feel like something's going to happen to him.
So, Mr. Johnson, can I ask you, I would like a couple of questions. So, I think I understand the request from Mr. Brown to be that y'all should not be changing locks and limiting his access to the property that he owns. Mr. Bishop may tell me that I have a wrong understanding of what they're asking for, but that's what I think I understand them to be asking for. So, what dispute would you have with Mr. Brown? I understand you've expressed that you have some concern about your safety and that you are personally afraid of Mr. Brown. But in terms of Mr. Brown being able to access the units that he owns, right? Why would you have an objection to that, Mr. Johnson?
Original contract. The company is not in default for us paying anything, as far as money that's owed so far. So, and him just walking into people's unit, I mean, if you was renting a house or an apartment or anything from anybody, the owner just don't come in and open up doors and go through people's houses, find out what's going on and how they living and where you sleeping at and stuff like that. That's unheard of.
Okay. Okay. The tenants that are in the different units, I think you mentioned Tia had a specific lease with Mr. Martin. The other tenants, where are they paying rent? Like, to whom are they paying rent?
Well, I normally collected them and gave everything to Mr. Martin. So
You're cutting out on me. You normally would collect them and give them to Mr. Martin, but now what?
they stopped that he died. So I told them to wait.
So they've not been paying rent for what, February, March, April?
Just actually they had yes.
Okay.
Make sure
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Anything else, Mr. Napier or Mr. Bishop?
I don't have anything.
I have one more question for Mr. Johnson, and that is, Mr. Johnson, do you understand that Mr. Brown entered the building after Mr. Martin's death on the request of his sister?
I don't understand that he entered the building on the request of his sister at all.
I have no further questions for Mr. Johnson, Your Honor. I would like to redirect Mr. Brown on this new gun issue.
Okay, well, you haven't finished your original direct. If you wanted to call on Miss Tia Johnson first, or which order would you like to go, Mr. Bishop?
Well, let's do, let me do Miss Johnson, and then maybe we can close with Mr. Brown.
Okay.
All right.
Ms. Johnson?
Excuse me.
Yes, sir, Mr. Johnson.
Ask the question. And I've never met Russell's sister, but I heard a lot about her. And I know the relationship he had with his sisters. And I honestly don't know if she even came to the property or not, because I never seen or heard anything from her. All I know is that he said that she came here. And I said, well, can you call her on a three-way business call, or can I call her and talk to her? Nothing. Okay. It just, get out, or do this or do that, or I got this, I can do this, I got power. You don't. That's all I heard from her.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Johnson. And I think that Ms. Johnson, Tia Johnson, had dropped off, but then it looks like has rejoined us. Ms. Johnson, are you able to turn on, excuse me, your audio and video?
It says in the chat, Your Honor, that she's trying, but it won't.
Yeah, I just saw that as well. If she's not able to turn on audio and video, then I don't know that you would be able to examine her as a witness. If she's able to rejoin us and is able to turn on her video, then we'll know. But at that point, perhaps you should move on to another witness.
Sure, I'll call Mr. Brown for a brief redirect, Your Honor.
Okay, Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Brown, you understand you're still under oath. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I didn't mean to.
No, I was just going to say the same thing. I was just going to remind Mr. Brown that you were sworn in at the beginning of the proceeding and that you continue to be under oath. Go ahead, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, Mr. Brown, just as the judge said, you're still under oath, still sworn to tell the truth. Did you take Mr. Johnson's guns from his building, or from the Unit 11 that he was occupying?
Not at all.
Do you know how many guns there were?
No, I never saw any guns whatsoever.
Is Mr. Johnson taller than you?
Oh, yes.
By how much?
About a foot.
And is he?
It seems like maybe not.
Is he
Maybe not that much.
Man?
I don't know.
Sure. Is he physically a bigger man than you?
Much more.
So would a man like, who's a foot smaller and all, would he be intimidating to the larger man in the David versus Goliath?
Of course.
So the shorter man would be intimidating to the larger one, or maybe?
Oh, no, the opposite. No, I'm not intimidating to him at all.
Have you ever heard of, did you sign this contract on the roof of a car with Mr. Johnson there?
That is a total 100% complete fabrication.
Did you have people jump in the fence?
Yes, the plumber, when he couldn't get into the gate, I said, well, you know how to jump. If you'll go over to that ledge, you can just jump in there and go ahead and give me the bid. I thought that Mr. Johnson was cooperating, and in fact told me he was cooperating. And I said, well, and I actually called him and I said, hey, I've got my plumber there, just wanted to let you know. And he was over at the Home Depot. He comes in from the Home Depot because of my call and chases off my plumber. So no, that's what happened.
Understood. Did you ever threaten Mr. Johnson?
Not at all.
Did you ever physically bow up at Mr. Johnson?
No,
Did you ever make the absurd, did you make any commentary on the independency of the Atlanta judges?
not at all. That's another fabrication.
Did you make any reference to any counsel you had or had not retained in any interaction with them?
At that point, I had no counsel.
I think that's all I've got for you on your redirect. Now, they will get a chance to recross you because I asked you these questions, Lou, and I'm sorry, but I wanted to get clear about the guns.
Sure.
Thank you. Mr. Napier or Mr. Johnson, do you have any additional questions for Mr. Brown? And it just, so you understand the way the rules work, it should be limited to the topic. Like, you've already had a chance to ask him questions about other things. So if you have questions, it should be limited to the topics that were covered in this more recent question. Mr. Johnson? Topic in this question. Mr. Johnson?
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can. I can.
Okay,
There's
okay.
an echo. Does somebody have,
It sounds like Tia joined, Your Honor.
I see that Ms. Johnson has joined, and yeah, I think she's got mute, so I think that will help. Try again, Mr. Johnson. Try again, Mr. Johnson.
The guys that you sent to the property, you didn't ask them to pick up anything or take anything with them?
No,
Okay. The guys that you sent to the property, you didn't ask them to pick up anything or take anything with them?
no.
Okay.
Mr. Freehoff, does somebody have it on live, or does somebody have it on YouTube, have the live stream open? Because that's usually what causes that sort of delay.
Yeah, I'm not sure, Your Honor, what's going on here.
Okay, well, as far as I'm concerned, I feel like you could probably end it. I don't know, or maybe restart it, but I can't. I can't live with that noise when I can't understand Mr. Johnson's testimony.
Understood. Are you asking me to end the meeting and restart it?
No, the live. I can't live with that noise when I can't understand Mr. Johnson's testimony.
Are you asking me to end the meeting and restart it?
No, the live.
All right, I've killed the YouTube, Your Honor. I will restart it now.
Okay. Try again,